Okay, so hello, people. Welcome to the very first episode of Tapcaf Transmissions, the brand new podcast style YouTube series. What did I call it on Twitter, Corey?
Uh,
Um,
oh, it was great. It was podcast.
it
It
was
was
like
it was basically what you'd see
book
on a
club
mayonnaise
style
jar,
podcast. Yeah, it's
may
on a mayonnaise
mayonnaise
jar.
style dressing, which Miracle Whip.
Oh God. So this is our brand new series. Mayonnaise likeness aside, we'll be talking about Star Wars Legends books. We're starting with the Truce at Bakura or Bakura. I'll probably go between each pronunciation today. And yeah, so the whole idea is we'll have a discussion on a book. You guys will hopefully read it in advance. And yeah, it'll be a great, fun time.
This
Corey,
shows
you want
what
to introduce
homework are the
yourself
best.
too for people who don't know you for some reason?
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm Corey. I have been involved with Star Wars stuff for about 13 years. Coming up next week when I started the Thrawn's Revenge mod for Empire at War. I've got my own lower channel where I do pretty niche stuff, and Eckhart and I have been looking for something to collaborate on for a while, and I think we both came up with the idea for the show individually and came to each other with it.
Hmm.
So it was seemed to work
Yeah.
out pretty well.
And for those who don't know, my name is Justin. I run the YouTube channel Eckhart's Ladder. I'm doing this introduction because the video, while live on my channel this time, is going to be posted on Corey's lore channel, Corey's Datapad. And then next week, we're going to switch it up. So Corey will have the live discussion on his channel, and then we'll have the VOD or the VOD over here. So he probably has a nicer stream setup than me. So if that's what you prefer, every second week, you'll get to experience that.
Yeah, so tomorrow morning the VOD for this one will be up on my channel. The VOD is also going to stay up on Eckhart's channel,
Mhm.
obviously. So whichever channel you want to watch it on, it'll be up at some point. But yeah, so if you're watching on my channel, definitely go over to Eckhart's channel and subscribe, and then you can see it live next time.
And we will be reading comments and everything. So if you have any, hopefully you read it, feel free to leave them. If you have any donations or anything, we will make sure that we get to it at the very least at the end. And next week, or sorry, not next week, but the week after next, we will be moving on to our next novel, which is book one of the X-Wing series, Rogue Squadron. I'd say it's a fan favorite.
Yeah, it's usually I think it and the Thrawn trilogy are usually held up as the best Legends books.
Hmm.
So
But yeah, it's basically just it's like Top Gun in space. So, I mean, you can't really go wrong.
a lot of it kind of set the stage for everything that would happen in the
Hmm.
next 20 years of Star Wars. But yeah,
And I think that's kind of a good place to jump in because we're talking about the Truce at Bakura, came out in 1993. So notably after Thrawn came out and after Dark Empire. So it's in a universe that's kind of had the first bit of establishment done. We know, for example, that the Empire is crumbling after Endor. We know that the Alliance is kind of standing in, trying to be this new provisional government. They don't call themselves the New Republic in this; they call themselves just the Alliance. We'll talk about that later. So it's kind of interesting how it builds on what was established by those, especially the Thrawn trilogy, a lot more than Dark Empire.
yeah. So you get mentions of things like Imperial Center and Palpatine, where the name hadn't been mentioned in a movie yet. Uh, Coruscant was brought up as Imperial Center in the Thrawn
Hmm.
trilogy, but it hadn't been established in like the first movie that it actually shows up in is Phantom Menace. So this is all stuff that's just from the EU at this point and hasn't been brought into the movie universe.
Right. Yeah, it fits in nicely, especially. So there's also a source book for this that we tried to stay mostly to the book, but we did read the source book as well. That came out 3 years later, and it was another excellent West End Games source book, and that sort of helped make it work well with X-Wing and just general with the universe as the source books kind of did back then. Oh, people are saying your sound is out. Let me
I'm
just.
gonna check that I have no noise gate. Is yours was doing that a little bit too?
Okay, is that better, guys?
So we'll
We should also
see. There we go.
mention. Yeah, we meant to say this too. We're kind of doing a lot of this. This is our obviously first episode, so you guys are the ones that get to experience
All the technical difficulties.
yeah, all the technical difficulties and stuff. Is that better? Okay. Corey's back. I also noticed some of my donation sounds are coming through, so I am gonna try to fix that real quick. Just close that out.
But yeah, so stuff like format and any technical issues, we're going to be trying to make sure we sort any of that out for as much as we can this time, and then also try to
Yeah.
improve it as much as we can for next time as well. So anything that you guys want to suggest, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah,
And
totally.
just bear with us a bit.
Yep. Oh, we should also talk about the name too, because if you've I think we like Tapcaf transmissions because Tapcaf is almost totally a Star Wars Legends thing. Like, I don't think they even mention it in the Clone Wars or anything.
I
Um,
don't think so.
but it's one of those things. I'm trying to think of another example. One of those things. Lead If you read Legends, they mention it all the time. Same with like repulsor lifts, you know. So for those who don't know, a Tapcaf is basically the Star Wars version of a bar. Usually, like you'll go down to the Tapcaf. You can also spell it with an E. But they also sometimes refer to it as a coffee shop, though it's usually a bar.
Yeah, so
So
bar or cafe.
yeah, because
Uh,
calf is coffee in Star Wars, so it's kind of a weird one. But
but
should we start with the like? So I think we looked at a bit of the out of universe text. Just for reference, this book starts like the first chapter is the day after the Ewok celebration. So Luke has just been shocked really badly by Palpatine, and he deals with that throughout the book. They start off on the fleet above Endor, and then it moves over. How many days did you say, Corey? Like 4 days, I
Yeah, I
think
think
we.
it's like 3 or 4 days max that the entire major plot of the book takes place because they get to Bakura from Endor, and then
Mhm.
it's from there 2 or 3 days before the
Yeah,
entire plot happens.
yeah. And the book itself is kind of like it's over a short period in the book itself. It's not insubstantial or anything or unsubstantial, but there is like it goes by quickly without a lot. Like all the action is really concentrated. You know, there's that scene at the beginning where the really weird scene where Wedge almost loses his hand, and then at the end there's the big battle and stuff, and then there's a couple little things in between. But the middle portions especially feel a lot like, and we'll do a full review at the end. But to me, at least, the middle portions feel a lot like, oh, Luke went to Gaeriel's apartment, or Gaeriel
Yeah,
came to Luke's apartment, or whatever else.
it's a 339-page book, and I think the last battle starts somewhere in the 280s or something.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of character development, I guess. A lot of focusing on
Yep.
Han and Leia's relationship,
Yeah.
on one of Luke's first romantic interests, which is I it
Luke's basically an incel. Just
yeah it every time that there's a romantic subplot in a Star Wars book that involves Luke, it's not great.
yeah. It's yeah, not great. I think is a good way to put it. So yeah, as I mentioned, the book moving in universe, the book basically opens with. We'll talk about the bit with the message pod is a bit weird, and it took me a couple of times reading it to really realize what was going. So basically, the Alliance fleet is in orbit. Most of the fleet's been well, not most of the fleet's been destroyed. I think they say 20% of the fleet is destroyed, but most of it's being repaired. So there's kind of a cool scene where like Luke is in his X-wing and it talks about like repair droids going between the ships, and just kind of I think fits nicely. Han and Leia are still on the ground, um, and I think in canon that's where little Kylo came from, but not in Legends. But but so there's this Imperial message pod, and it's supposed to be. They say it's pre-Clone Wars, very expensive, and it's being powered by some sort of crystal. Um,
Yeah, it's like a physical pod that they delivered. It's a message
yeah,
in a bottle in space, and they
kind of
actually do
like
talk a lot
from
about how like HoloNet access is a very exclusive
yeah.
thing in this book. Like the captain, was it Commander Thanos that was surprised that the Rebel flagship in the book, the Flurry,
Oh
had
yeah,
access
was it?
to HoloNet
Yeah,
transmissions.
yeah, because it was stolen Imperial parts, I think.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so they have something similar with in Jedi Academy too. For the don't they have a message pod on the? Or am I misremembering? But I think there's a message pod that Kip Duran hides out in book 3 of Jedi Academy after he throws what's it called into the maw. He hides it in a message pod, but I could be misremembering.
No, that sounds right. And then Han has to go and get him, and he's sure he's
Yeah,
dead. But yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
we'll
don't
get
be
back
there.
to that in about what 36 weeks, or
Yeah, quite a
probably more than
while.
that with our next our
Quite a
Jedi
while.
Academy read through.
Yeah. So yeah, they find this message pod and it's being powered by these crystals. And what is it? If the crystals touch, the whole thing will explode. So Wedge has his hand in there basically, and I can't remember if he's trying to keep them together or keeping them separated. Either way, his hand is being crushed, and Luke has to. It's a very kind of complicated thing, and it's not. That's one of the things about this book. It's like they're still figuring out how the universe works. They do a really good job with a lot of it. Like the HoloNet stuff is really good. The way they talk about the Empire in this time period is really good. But then you get like the crystals is kind of weird. And what basically happens is Luke flies over there with his X-wing, and I think he chops the power supply for one of them. At the same time, Wedge jumps and he almost loses his hand. And there's actually a kind of cool moment that Luke uses like a force power you don't see that often, where he sees through Wedge's eyes. He's like,
Hmm.
"Look at it for me." Um, Usually, it's just like something like that would be like empathetic, like he's feeling what Wedge feels, but he actually sees through his eyes. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if that comes up too much, because I think it was something that came up more with like Jason's weird
Mm,
Force Odyssey, where he went to other
yeah.
Force user groups and learned a bunch of different powers. I don't think it's something that you ever really see other Jedi do.
One thing that's kind of similar, like back still when like the books in the 90s, they would often have Luke disguise himself without actually like later on they would use makeup, but I'm trying to remember. I think in Crystal Star, Luke basically disguises himself through the Force. Basically, he alters his appearance, and
Yeah.
that's kind of similar to me because it's kind of affecting what people see. But I guess it's different in a way. But yeah, it's definitely kind of an esoteric Force power, I
Well,
guess.
he also directly mind controls a Pwek slave, which are like these basically Chad Ruvi to
Virgin
Virgin
Black
Pweks.
Slave. You didn't
I
want to
think
say it,
that's
but I felt
yeah.
I felt okay saying it.
But
Speaking of, I guess we kind of well, maybe we'll get to the Ssi-ruuk later, but so he mind controls a puck. I actually don't remember that part. Which
it was when he was I think it was when he was breaking out of the thing at the end that they set up to touch him. But
oh
we'll
right,
we'll probably get to that a bit later with
yeah,
instead of jumping ahead to the
yeah.
end of the
'Cause
book.
thinking about it, he does stuff like that too with the battle droid starfighters.
Yeah.
He's like killing yourself is better than. But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll talk about the because the Ssi-ruuk are a really weird faction. They use some strange technology. But basically, we're kind of moving right into this. The message pod is basically from, isn't it? Would you call it an outpost or just an occupied? It's an imperial planet, Bakura, in Lake Endor. It's really far out from the core. And yeah, back in I guess galactic terms in this book, they talk about mostly something is either on the rim or it's in the core, and of course, the core is where everyone is. And this is in the source book too. And then the rim is, much more unlawful, and that's you can find stuff like that from the earliest bits of Star Wars.
Uh
But yeah,
yeah, later
good.
on the Siruvi and a bunch of surrounding areas get mentioned as being part of the unknown regions. I don't think that was really established yet, but Bakura is basically right on the edge of known
Yeah,
space before that. Uh,
yeah. And so the world is known mostly because they produce repulsor lifts, and repulsor lifts are one of those things that are mentioned in every Star Wars Legends book. Basically, if it allows you to hover in atmosphere, and so a lot of things in Bakura float.
Literally everything. Repulsor
Yeah,
chairs, repulsor beds.
beds.
It so they have the repulsor beds. I wasn't sure if it was a bed where the platform was floating or
That's what I imagine it as.
if it was a repulsor that was holding them up, because that's what it kind of
Oh,
sounded like from Gaeriel's sleeping scene. And this is clearly the most important discussion point we'll
yeah,
have
I
of the
know.
night.
I'm
But
pretty sure Tenel Ka has one too. Later on, they mentioned her having a repulsor bed. Yeah, I never. That actually makes more sense. I always assumed that it was just like they were too lazy to make the legs, so they just stuck some repulsors on like a block of wood.
that
But
seems harder.
that does seem way harder. So that actually makes sense now.
If you have like a power
Um,
outage in the middle of the night and you're sleeping on a repulsor bed, you just smack down. Like,
yeah, Jesus. Um, yeah,
but
I
yeah,
never thought
so
about that either. So yeah, they
uh,
make repulsor tech.
Palpatine
Uh,
had much earlier made a deal with. He had discovered the Ssi-ruuk apparently in a Force vision and communicated with them through the Force. Uh,
Spooky.
that the Ssi-ruuk, so their technology is all powered basically by souls or life force, where they hook up uh, a being to these machines, and then they sap out the life energy to power their battle droids or basically anything else. And
Yeah,
Palpatine
like
had, sorry.
you could be like, sorry, I just like, uh, if you're lucky, your soul gets ripped out of you and and you power a battle droid. If you're unlucky, your soul gets ripped out of you and you power like a microwave or like the Ssi-ruuk foot massager. So it's like,
Yeah, and they're
yeah,
they're conscious inside of this. Like Luke
yeah, you're
reaches out
still
and touches the
alive.
minds in it.
There's like shit, shit, shit. Not having a good time at all.
The Ssi-ruuk electric toothbrush. What a horrible life.
Get another prisoner. We just batteries ran out.
But
Um,
Palpatine wanted some of the Ssi-ruuk battle droids, which were very heavily shielded, really strong.
mhm,
They're basically mass spammable fighters that the Ssi-ruuk use, and he was basically offering these Outer Rim Imperial worlds to the Ssi-ruuk, where they could take the entire population and touch them, which was what the process was called to get the power, and
mhm,
then he'd do that in exchange for getting some of the droids. Uh,
right.
so they attacked and then sent this message, and the Bakuran sent this message to get help from the Imperial fleet at Endor, which little did they know, the
Yeah.
rebels had blown up most of it and sent the rest to the core.
Yeah. So the rebels are kind of in a weird spot at this or weird position right now too, because they've just blown up the second Death Star yesterday. Palpatine is dead, and they kind of see themselves now, and they talk about how the galaxy kind of sees itself now, see themselves as a quasi-legitimate government. And interestingly, the source book talks about how they're not yet the New Republic that would come much later, but they take the name the Alliance of Free Planets, which I found interesting because the Alliance of Free Planets is actually the name, and I should mention this isn't in the book, it's only in the source book. In the book, they just call themselves the Alliance, and the Empire calls them the Rebels. But the idea of an alliance of free planets as sort of a precursor to the New Republic first came back from the Marvel comics after Return of the Jedi, because, and this is really off topic, so I'll keep it short. But basically, Marvel was super limited to what they could do, so they were kind of treading water. So they made this kind of new group, and that's what the alliance sort of is here. So not quite a full government. They wouldn't have, some worlds would have kicked the Empire off, but Bakura wasn't one of them at this point. They were still under Imperial command, and they have a very small fleet. The source book talks about how many of the planets in the Outer Rim wouldn't have any fleet, but because they do have these repulsor stations or repulsor factories, they have a single Carrack cruiser. And did you say a DP-20 as well, Corey?
Yeah, they had two DP-20s, which are the blocky Corellian gunships, according
Hmm.
to the source book, and four smaller corvettes that the source book draws like their IPVs, but are apparently something else entirely.
Oh,
So
okay.
very
Those are the
small
Empire ships.
things. And
Okay.
in the book, it's mentioned that the Carrack is like 80% of the Imperial force,
Yeah.
which is
It's
just
basically
sad.
like, yeah. Yeah, Carrick is so yeah, so this is like the edge of the edge. So far, the Ssi-ruuk were talked about being I think they kind of later stuff has called them they're like in some sort of like cluster or nebula near the edge of the galaxy, but in this book they actually kind of talk about themselves invading the galaxy, so they're actually from outside of the galaxy proper. So that's how far out we are here, and that's why the alliance at Endor, which is also really really far in the middle of nowhere, is best positioned to respond. And then they have the bonus effect that they can, Leia especially is like, well, we gotta get them with us if we're gonna be here. We might as well get our first planet in our new alliance.
Yeah, and on their way to attacking Bakura, the Ssi-ruuk had taken another world called Groho, or Gro,
Oh yeah,
or G-Roho. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
that's a good try.
But, well, we can just cut out whichever ones don't work. Because I
Perfect.
did like 5. So,
Yeah.
when they were taking that planet, it was like 5 years before, I think, and they
Right.
had captured a Force-sensitive kid named Dev Sibwara, who
Hmm.
is helping them with the attachment process because he can relax the people and make it much easier for them to take all this life energy.
Hmm.
So he's
Yeah.
also used to communicate with the Bakurans, and he like promises them this wonderful life free of pain and everything, where they can live forever as a battle droid. And his biggest dream in life is to become a Ssi-ruuk battle droid.
And he's also like, "Oh, and don't worry, our flagship is coming." And what's the Ssi-ruuk name for it again?
Shriwer,
Yeah, which is like what, filled with eggs or something he calls it, or
ripe with eggs.
ripe with eggs. So basically, these alien lizards, and they do look like lizards with spooky nose tendrils, are coming in a ship called Ripe with Eggs. So
I'd
enjoy that
I'd
one.
I'd join. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to
But we should
I
also
want to
mention
power the
too.
shields on a battle droid.
Yeah, because the battle droids have like two souls inside them. One's probably doing the flying, the other is just like, well, I guess because I'm doing the shields.
Yeah, that sounds like the most boring thing possible.
Yeah.
Like, the other one
Well,
gets to fly, presumably fire the weapons, all the fun stuff, and then it probably blows up in like 3 seconds because they're
yeah,
little 2 meter triangular pyramid or
yeah,
square base pyramids, and then shields.
yeah.
Strong shields, but still
Well,
shields.
there's others on the Ripe with Eggs powering like. Because remember Luke frees all of them, and it's like, yeah, powering a cable.
Yeah, the paddle beamer. So they have these little melee weapons that are essentially tasers that just have contact. Like, they
Yeah.
don't shoot people; they just smack them a bit. And there's
Mhm.
souls powering that too. So
Can you imagine being like paralyzed by like your best friend? It's like they took Johnny, now he's paralyzing me.
it's the worst horror movie ever.
Oh man. That's like, yeah, that's but we should mention too, Dev isn't really doing this on his own accord. He's being continually hypnotized
Yeah, they
by Big
spray him with
Blue.
this hypnotic spray, like some sort of mind-numbing agent, and then he looks deep into the eyes of one of the Siruvi, a blue guy named Shitikith. It's going to be
Yeah,
impossible to pronounce anything of the Siruvi
yeah, it's
names
like
other than
Shatika,
Admiral
Shakit.
Ivpicus, because that's nice
Yeah,
and
if Pickus
easy.
isn't bad.
But he's basically, they call it renewing him, I'm pretty sure, where every so
Yeah,
often,
renewal.
if he starts seeming like, hey, maybe this isn't the best thing in the world, he'll just get mind wiped,
Yeah,
basically.
like he starts to he always and like he will get angry at them, like you killed my parents, which they did. Um, or just like the fact that because humans, we should mention too, humans are the best source of entechment power. Um,
Yeah, that's why
like
they
they
want
they
to invade
also
the galaxy.
right, because they do intech the POEX sometimes. Like if they really need to, but they're kind of crappy. Human minds can like last for a while, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like getting
but they should
shitty Duracell AA batteries
right.
versus the nice rechargeable ones.
Right, Amazon Essentials, basically what humans are. Um, so yeah, they've got a weird relationship too because he's always like snuggling with one of them, and or like he sleeps next to them, and then they always like scratch his arm and kind of it's kind of like a weird thing because
He's like a
he's always
pet.
like yeah, but he's always talking about how he's such a fragile skinned human, and they're always like scratching him just for fun to make him bleed and stuff. It's really
Yeah, it's super messed up.
yeah.
So yeah, the
Damn it,
the
Kathy.
rebels. Hmm?
I said Kathy was yeah, she got started, and then they took a 3-year break after this book, so Kathy made it a little too weird, maybe.
It was like, yeah, we were talking about this a little earlier, but it was like they were setting up for a much bigger plot of Ssi-ruuk
Yeah.
invading the galaxy, and they
Hmm.
didn't do that. We'll talk it towards the end of the
Yeah,
show
we'll
about
mention that later. Yeah.
where stuff comes up again later, but yeah, this message in a bottle gets to Endor.
Hmm.
The rebels intercept it because obviously the Imperial fleet is gone, and they decide they're going to send one Quasar class carrier, one Krellian corvette, and was it 5 DP-20s of their own to go and help against
Yeah.
this invasion
Yeah.
force of aliens who are going to dominate the galaxy?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of a weird fleet setup because it's like I mean, they could have given them something. Like this is like an existential. They're like, take this fighter carrier. Best of luck, boys. See if you get back. And the Falcon too, of course, and Rogue Squadron. But
they have a
yeah,
lot of
it's kind
plot
of
power, but in terms of
yeah,
actual firepower, really, they did not care about Bakura. Is
no, yeah,
they're
and Luke is also a mess at this point too
yeah.
because he's in med bay for the first quite a bit.
Everyone's telling him not to go because he's clearly like this is 24 hours after he's been given
Electrified.
electroshock therapy by Palpatine,
His bones are
and
calcifying. They're
yeah,
basically
that
saying.
he did not forget to drink his milk.
It's like, yeah, you're screwed, but good luck. Go fight these raptors who will steal your soul. Sounds very restful and relaxing.
Yeah. So Luke is given command of this mission where he's like commanding this fleet from the Quasar, which is not something that you see too often in Star Wars, because Luke is actually bad at this.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
really bad at it.
not not a not a thing he should be doing. He's fine in a
Yeah, even
starfighter, but like
yeah, like Grandmaster Luke and even Jedi Luke, he often like when the order was kind of revived, he would lead fighter squads in battle all the time, but especially like during the Vong War and like Second Galactic War and whatnot. But I can't really think of too many occasions where he actually like leads a fleet because usually like he was off doing Jedi stuff.
he did briefly become the supreme commander of Imperial forces, didn't he? In Dark
Yes, he
Empire.
did. Yes, I forgot about that.
So that clearly he's qualified. He probably put it on his
Yeah,
CV, like commanded Quasar
I don't know.
carrier at Bakura.
And every world devastator ever. Yeah. Um. So yeah, so his first little skirmish. So they get Rogue Squadron, and then like they talk about Wedge is explicitly named in the book, and then I think in X-wing number 1 they talk about Tycho mentions that he was part of the Bakura attack. Like it was just Rogue Squadron at the time. Um. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so they get all the rebels together with the Falcon in tow, and yeah, they show up, and it's basically like Bakura. They show up at the perfect time because Bakura, the small Imperial defense fleet, is like nearly overwhelmed, and I think they even mentioned that like the Ssi-ruuk are dropping shuttles and stuff down to the planet. And the thing is about the Ssi-ruuk invasion, it's kind of like self-propagating, and once they take one world, it becomes much worse because they use this entechment power basically to create new battle droids. So it's like every world they take, and I mean it doesn't necessarily make sense, but every world they take, the more powerful their navy gets.
Yeah, they had not discovered any other kind of electricity, apparently. It was
Yeah,
just the souls. But once they got those souls, they could do a lot with them.
yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention too. Obi-Wan shows up, and it's like
Right, there's a few Force Ghost appearances.
yeah, and Obi-Wan's is kind of strange because it's like Obi-Wan will come in and be like, "Go visit Yoda," and then in this one, Obi-Wan is like, the Emperor called the Ssi-ruuk.
Yeah,
It's like
he knows all this stuff that he has no business knowing.
yeah.
And there was even a point in the book where Luke tries to talk to Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Vader because he's lonely and wants girl advice. And I guess it hadn't been established yet that the Jedi Order was well, they
No,
weren't
not
celibate, but they weren't allowed to have attachments like that.
yeah.
So it really did, it was super weird and whiny. But Was it on the way to Bakura that Vader and Leia talk, or were they on Bakura already?
No, they're already there.
Okay, I don't want to.
It's
jump
weird
ahead
too
like
because
that.
it's also weird too because she's like just getting out of the refresher. It's very odd.
Yeah, I'm always watching, but
like, what? Yeah.
especially
we'll
with
get
half
there.
of Leia's scenes in the book about like her and Han trying to have sex, which is uncomfortable for everyone. But yeah, so
That actually
they.
kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna continue on with the plot of the book because we're getting
Yeah,
super.
it's probably important.
But yeah, so the Alliance gets to Bakura. They start defending. There's a brief discussion between Commander Peter Thanis, spelled without the first E, P-T-E-R, because Star Wars, and
Second E,
was it
isn't it?
P-E-T-R or P-T?
Isn't it P?
Am I thinking about
Oh yeah,
pterodactyls?
yeah. I think you
Or
are.
oh
Wait,
damn,
hold on.
too many dinosaurs.
Sorry, I shouldn't have corrected you if I wasn't sure.
Now I'm not sure. Let's open our books to
No,
prove.
you are right. It's the
It's
first one.
P-T-E-R. But yeah,
Rip.
so the Imperial commander on the Carrick does accept the rebels' help. They all work together and they talk about making a formal truce. So this is the first time, I think, in any Star Wars media where the rebels and the Imperials started actually working together for something. That's where you
Maybe,
also
yeah.
get the title. It's all coming back here. They're making a truce and they're at Bakura.
Wow.
It was all leading to this moment.
Well, they're all fighting except Han and Leia because Han's like, we should probably protect the only diplomatic person we have here, and they leave. Tries to Leia and the Falcon. Like it's in the middle of battle, and Han's like, "Don't think so." He flies over to some ice planet, and then they park in space, and they're like, he shows her to like he's got like a kind of bed and stuff set up in the in one of the cargo holds.
Yeah,
And I don't know. That just seemed very like I can't see Leia ever agreeing to that.
he had
As she
Chewbacca set up a romantic getaway in the Falcon for them, and there were a
yeah.
bunch of inflatable pillows in a it
Yeah. So while Luke is like just a disaster when it comes to women, he's written like I know he's not 18 anymore. He'd be what, like
he'd
is
be
he 22?
22 because it's 4
He's
years
written like a
after.
22-year-old. Han, on the other hand, is just total alpha male entire book.
How much older
um,
is Han? Is he 6 years older than Luke and Leia?
I'm not sure. Someone in the chat probably knows that.
But yeah, so there's this space battle for the future of humanity going on. Chewie's trying to get Han laid, and Leia's having none of it at
She's totally
first.
well, yeah.
She
Well, she comes around until they get shot by the battle droid.
yeah, that kind of ruined the moment, which you'd think they wouldn't have the moment then, but you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then they land, I guess, and
they go back and help in the battle a bit,
oh
and then
right,
they end
yeah.
up driving the Ssi-ruuk off. They start retreating, and it's only like two major cruisers. I think it's a Shri class cruiser, a Luek class cruiser. So these are relatively small. They're I think 600 meters for both of them. It's much larger than the Carrick, but
Yeah,
it's the small scouting force. And then after that happens, the commander says he's going to do everything he can to make sure that it's the truce stays until they've dealt with everything the Ssi-ruuk are doing, and they do end up going to the planet at this point.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a so there are two real main I guess we now's not a bad time to talk about the major players in the book. Obviously, on the
Mhm.
Rebel we have the trio, and we have the droids, and we have Chewie, and Wedge is in the book, but he stays mostly in space. And after almost losing his hand, he mostly stays in space. Um, and then we have for the Imperials, we have Peter Thanis, he's basically like the kind of good Imperial. He's basically relegated to this backwater world because I don't remember what the exact story is. He refused
Uh,
some
it was
unethical
on
order.
Alzok, I think he was, where he was running Tal's mine, Tal's slavers in some mines,
Right.
and he figured out that the slaves would work better if they were given more food.
Hmm.
And like he wasn't trying to do it to be a good person; he just thought it would be more productive. And then the Tals figured out that he was the one that gave them more food. There was an incident in the mines, and then the Tals saved him.
Hmm.
But when I think it was his successor tried to come in and reduce the food again. There were revolts,
Right.
and for whatever reason, I forget exactly what happened, but Thanos got transferred out to Bakura because he had violated some of the policy with how they should treat the Taus. So he
Hmm.
was sent to end his career in this backwater world on a Carrack protecting repulsor lifts.
Yeah, and he's got some angst about that too.
Yeah,
Throughout the book, he's like, "Ah, Christ." um, and then but him and Luke kind of connect at one point, and he's not like a terrible guy. But then we have Governor Nearest, who would be like he's kind of like the representative from the Empire who keeps things in line. And he's much
awful.
less. Yeah, he's pretty awful. He's creepy. He's got what did you call it? Like a weird tooth and bug fetish.
Yeah, so he's got like it doesn't come up till the end of the book, and it's super weird when it does. But
Yeah, it's odd.
he's got this giant collection of teeth. His desk is made out of a giant tooth. He threatens to pull out one of or some of Leia's teeth as trophies
Mhm.
too. And yeah,
And he owns other human teeth too.
yeah. It's just
Yeah,
gross. And
yeah, that and the bugs, and he's just a really
yeah, he likes
he's
using little parasites for killing people and uh, wiping memories and stuff. Like just any kind of
yeah.
parasite he can get to do whatever he needs. That's his go-to strategy. It seems like.
Mhm. Speaking of wiping memories, so we can talk. So those are the main Imperials. There are some other smaller ones, but those really are the main ones. And Nearest doesn't show up in later books. We'll talk about why later. But actually, I guess Thanos doesn't either. But he does kind of have
He gets
an
mentioned.
impact on the story. Yeah, he gets mentioned.
And
So
I guess just before we move on from that, just a little bit more context
yeah.
on Nereus is that uh, with the Empire fracturing, it comes up with a lot of Nereus's motivations
Oh
that
yeah.
there is this power vacuum within the Empire. So uh, he's kind of hoping that he can do really well with Bakura and then position himself to either gain favor with
Hmm.
the new emperor and eventually, ideally, position himself to become the emperor. So a lot of what he's doing kind of fits into that. So uh,
Yeah, and even Thanos is kind of tempted because there's a big price on Luke's head still to be captured alive. So it's basically like, yeah, the rebel heroes are here. So if you capture them, like your life changes. So one character goes one way through some force suggestion, I guess, and the other Nearest is pretty evil throughout, and he wants. So even though there is like technically the truce on Nearest like formally approves of the truce when he finds out Palpatine died because it's basically knowledge that yeah, there's no Imperial reinforcements coming. Um, so they team up and at least on a they're supposed to team up and take on the Empire. It's kind of interesting too. You talked about the fracturing, and Luke has a line too about how even though Palpatine was dead, it would take months or even years for people across the galaxy to know.
yeah, and I think that
Which,
kind of tied into how Kathy Tears did uh, or how she thought about the HoloNet stuff,
hmm
where hyperspace or across hyperspace communication, it was not very fast, I guess, or not very
hmm
accessible.
yeah,
Uh, so HoloNet news not a huge priority for them.
no, yeah, because you don't really hear like once they leave. I guess they have a little bit of communication with the Rebel fleet, but it's because the Quasar has been, or sorry, the Flurry's been heavily upgraded with like Imperial receivers and stuff. But otherwise, it's like yeah, like and Legends is like that's throughout. It's like different kind of levels of. It's like sometimes I think in the new Thrawn book did this too. It's like one holonet transceiver or whatever goes down, and basically you're cut off from the rest of the galaxy.
Well, the
So
entire thing with the comics where Lumaya was Shira Bree in in the
mhm.
rebellion, where they have to kill that beast thing. I forget what it was
Oh yeah,
called, but it was because it was a really powerful HoloNet transceiver. It could act as one,
the
so it's
Teasel.
yeah, the Tietzel.
Yeah,
It so apparently this is all a very big deal. Communications in Star Wars is inconsistent and unreliable in and out
that
of
kind of
universe.
that kind of reminded me too. I guess although it's technically later in universe. Out of universe, the Rebels and the Empire do team up a few times, I think, to fight the Toths when they
Yeah,
invade.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Actually, would the tops be before or after chronologically? It was
it would
it was
it would
after
have to be
chronologically.
after because
Yeah,
it's
because this is
after
right
Endor and
after.
yeah. Um, yeah, so it's
Uh,
kind of two like existential threats for the galaxy coming from outside. Pretty short time period.
so our next set of characters are the Bakurans themselves, who are largely Imperial sympathizers, but some of them are hoping to join the rebellion or at least throw off Imperial rule. You have Jorg Captison, who is the Prime Minister, his niece Gaeriel Captison, who is a Bakuran senator. They have their own senate, which is sort of like under the Imperial government.
That's
She had
weird.
gone to Coruscant to some Imperial governing school, which was the standard procedure, because then they could go for a year of indoctrination, go back to their home system, and run the government there.
Must be a
Then,
huge school.
yeah, there's what, thousands of systems,
Yeah.
and you got the Bakuran Senate. Was it 20 people or 28 people or 280? Something,
Yeah,
I forget which
I don't
factor 10 I'm
remember.
off by, but do
Regardless,
that
it's
times
a
everyone.
small planet, and like she gets to go, and it's like Bakura is like Ohio, basically. So
Yeah. Then you have Epi and Orn Belden. Orn Belden is a senator, so
right,
also same position as Gaeriel, but he's like uh, in his mid hundreds, so 150 ish. His wife Epi is like 133, and
yeah,
she has long term memory loss, which you later find out is something that the Empire did to her, but at first they thought it was just that she
hmm
had started losing her memory at a relatively young age of 130.
yeah,
So,
130 years old, and yeah, I think Ord is 161 or 163, so it's crazy. Do you want to talk about the aging stuff now because it is,
yeah, yeah, I
or
guess
do
we
you want to
can.
save that for later?
Yeah, we can go into it now. Probably.
Okay. So some of you might decide I did a video about this a while ago, but just kind of short version is this book, and it's probably this is one of the things we talked earlier about how most of this is it fits pretty nicely into the larger EU, but then you get weird things like this. So yeah, like Corey said, Epi, her memory loss is described as being at a young age, and she would have lost it when she was in her 120s. And Ord is 161. He got a lot of replacement. Like I think the source book says he's had 7 replacement eyes or something, and he speaks with like a voice transcoder or whatever. But he's still completely active and whatnot. And so this is kind of it doesn't really fit in nicely with the rest of the EU because mostly when you get sick or when you need to replace something, you don't go for replacement organs, which is what you do on Bakura, according to this book. Instead, you usually just get a machine part, and you can basically have your brain put into a machine and still function.
Well, with
So
Bakura,
yeah,
you can kind of fit that in with their hatred of droids, where one of the first
true.
colony ships that went to Bakura, uh, there were some droid malfunctions and they almost killed everyone. So you can probably just fit that in as like they don't
That's
trust
true.
any
Yeah, I didn't really
mechanical
think about
parts.
that.
Whereas everywhere else in the galaxy, you lose a hand, just get a new hand. Lose a
Yeah, that's a
heart,
good
just get a
point.
new heart.
But they
And
don't really like. To be honest, not many characters die in the EU, and not many die of old age. Pelion is in his 90s. I think he's 91 or 93.
when he gets
When
shot,
when he's killed by
yeah. You have
and he's
Akbar
still
dying of
functioning
old age, but he was in
the
his
fish shop.
70s and he had spent most of his life out of water, which the Mon Cal they didn't
Right.
enjoy. And then Mon Mothma had these like nano machines that were
Nano,
eating
yeah.
her from inside for a while, and then she dies probably at a similar age to Akbar, but she was pretty
Yeah.
young, only in her
That also
70s or 80s.
reminds me that the Akbar thing reminded me. Um, I might have read it wrong, but in this book, Home One isn't Akbar's flagship. He moves to a different ship, which they say is more comfortable. Did you catch that?
I didn't.
Because Luke is being healed on Home One, I think, But it talks about how Akbar moved to a different flagship. If you search
I'm just searching flagship.
what's or it might not have been different flagship, but a ship that was more comfortable because it has different air conditioning, basically. Let's see if I can find the quote here. But yeah, I thought that was really weird because it's a Mon Calamari cruiser, and that was established for a while that the ships were Mon Calamari. So it's kind of a weird. Why does everyone want me to say bacon?
Although the Calamarian had commanded the Battle of Endor from a chair under the broad starry viewport on Luke's left, Akbar felt more comfortable on his own cruiser.
Yeah.
So I guess she hadn't realized that Home 1 was a Mon Cal cruiser when she wrote the book?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That would have been established because I'm pretty sure even the concept art calls it Mon Cal Cruiser, so it's kind of a weird
Oh well.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But yeah, so what were we talking about?
Well, we just finished, I guess, going over the Bakuran character, so maybe a quick overview of the Ssi-ruuk in there.
Right. Yeah, do you wanna handle that? Because
all right, so Ssi-ruuk are dinosaurs. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, picture any of those, and just more tendrils coming out of their nose. But you have the two major Ssi-ruuk are Firwarung, who's a brown Ssi-ruuk. They have a different case system that's introduced in a later book that is kind of inconsistent with what happens in Truce of Bakura. But Firwarung is in charge of all the attachment, so he's the one that's actually treated as Dev Sibwara's like master, basically, and he's the one that eventually wants to attach Luke, because then Luke could do what Dev is doing, only with a lot more training, because Luke is a lot more powerful. And then you have
Luke is like said to be able to detect people from a distance. Like,
that's what
even
they want
outside
to do.
tractor beam range. So
they basically want to use a really powerful Jedi to attach people from, like, just drop into orbit, attach everyone, and then they're good. But it's Firwarung, and then the other major important character for the Ssi-ruuk is Shtikith.
Yeah.
Shtkith, but with apostrophes. But he's a Ssi-ruuk noble dude. He's the one that handles all of Dev's renewals, and he's the one that's kind of in charge of everything that they're doing. There is a Ssi-ruuk admiral there named Picus, but he doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything at all, really.
But I think that covers all the major characters. So
yeah,
they're landing on Bakura. Leia is lucky enough to speak to the entire Bakuran Senate, and during this, Luke meets Gaeriel, and by meets I mean sees her from across the room, falls madly in love, and it's
instantly
super, super uncomfortable to read because it makes no sense. They go to a dinner later that has Jorg, Gaeriel. Is Nereus there? I don't think Nereus is there. They want to.
He shows up later.
Yeah, they invite basically everyone we've listed except for the Ssi-ruuk. Maybe if they had, that was something. They've never tried diplomacy with the Ssi-ruuk.
That's true.
They never offered them any kind of like other energy technology, so they didn't have to enslave and kill everyone.
To be fair, they do try. Like, that's why they have the droids working on the. Because they call the Ssi-ruuk communicate in like bird noises, so they call them fluties.
So you're thinking that the racial epithets that the Bakurans are throwing around in the Imperials are going to stop any negotiations before they happen.
Well, they do have R2 and C-3PO working on like translation.
Yeah.
But I mean, they do have Dev, so I don't know why like Luke couldn't have just sent him some peaceful thoughts and just had.
Well, wasn't it before? Wasn't the C-3PO and R2 stuff before Luke had figured out that he could contact Dev, and Dev wasn't fully enslaved the entire time?
Yeah, you're right, because Dev feels him when they're like during the battle, because it's like, oh, he feels like my mom but more powerful. And then
which is basically what Luke thinks when he sees Gaeriel. It's like my sister.
But she feels sparkly, basically. Like he literally falls in love with her before she even says his name one time, because by the time she says his name, he's just like, oh my god, it's the first time she said my name.
Yeah, it's the biggest deal ever. Half the book is basically about Luke being in love with Gaeriel. That's what the first 250 pages are about, where he's upset that he's all alone. And when they finally meet at the dinner, she is having none of it. Like, she
Yeah.
hates Jedi because of her religion, where she thinks that if people are like taking a lot of power, they're taking away from other people. So she basically tells him point blank, like, everything you stand for, I hate, and also the Empire is pretty cool. He's like, I'm in love with you more than
I
ever.
love you even more.
I know you better
Uh,
than anyone ever has. And
he
it's
literally
just,
says that, like, and
I
she's
wanted to
like,
shoot myself.
she literally has like anxiety about him reading her mind because why wouldn't you? And there's a lot of that actually because at one point Luke gives Han, he doesn't read his mind, but he gives like some, he cools Han's jealous, I think, when I
Yeah,
forget if
there's some
it's
Alderanian guy that's on
yeah,
Bakura, and Han thinks, like, I guess assumes that Leia is just going to dump him and go with the Alderanian guy. So
based on the
Luke
courtship
calms
of
him.
Princess Leia, it's a reasonable fear.
Well, maybe
um,
because Han had been acting like that for years.
yeah, true. Um, and that'll be yeah when we get there, that'll be fun. But so yeah, Luke uses his kind of force. It's not force empathy, but he kind of chills Han out, and Han gets really pissed because they really focused in the older books about how going into someone's mind and affecting them like that is a real violation of like kind of like a person's I don't know like integrity and like their just their it's just it's like a violation of their mind really, and that's one of those things that like depending on who's writing a Star Wars book, Luke and Leia and whoever else will be using mind tricks at will. And then, like for example, in the Thrawn duology, Luke doesn't want to do it at all because it's like it's really bad. So Gaeriel is rightly worried about that, and Luke is like, "No, I can't read your mind. I can just tell how you're feeling at all points." And then she's like, kind of, she
And
doesn't like
also, I
that.
can
And then,
see whatever you're looking at, apparently, at any point.
yeah, yeah. And then later, when they've had like one conversation, he's this is gonna be hard to hear, but I've known you more than anyone ever has in your entire life.
Yeah. And you'd think this would put her off even more, but the next day, they get lunch together,
Well,
and
yeah,
then suddenly they're best friends, and she's apparently now super into him too. So just reinforcing all of the bad behaviors anyone might be getting from reading this book. So just
and
don't be Luke. That's the biggest takeaway for anyone who read this book. Stop.
one of Luke's many troubled relationships. I mean, he blows up what's her name, a TIE fighter. He's got Danny, the Zeltron from the Marvel comics. So he probably should have went for her because she was really into him, but he for some reason, because the Zeltrons are like hypersexual, he's like not interested. Like Luke, you prude. Um, he falls in love here, Gaeriel, after literally 10 seconds. And then he falls in love with a computer, basically with Callista. And then he falls in love with. Is there anyone between? Oh, what's the name of the one? Who's it before Mara? Then next, well, he meets
There's
Mara, but then there's
the
someone else.
I think there's the other one who was like
Fallen
could
Nazi,
float.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's her
I
name?
forget her name. But
That one was weird.
yeah,
And then
wasn't it in
Mara,
the was that in Black Fleet Crisis or was that in
I think it
Lando's?
is Black. Yeah, it's Black Fleet Crisis.
But yeah,
It's
so
well,
we'll definitely track this through line of the EU as we go through, uh
yeah.
but yeah, so while this is happening, I think this is the same day that Luke is having this meal with Gaeriel, where because it was sent by the Imperials, the Nereus had actually put a. This was after the Ssi-ruuk had said they want Luke. They had sent a delegation to Nereus saying, "If you give us Luke, we're gonna leave." And Nereus doesn't
Nobody
believe it,
believes them.
but he wants to give them Luke with these parasites in his lungs, where Luke will die, so the Ssi-ruuk can't use him for what they want to use him for, and then it'll infest all the Ssi-ruuk on the ship. So Luke gets those implanted at lunch because there's like larvae in the food.
And it's
But
fish too, which is kind of gross.
yeah,
Fresh fish.
there's twice that he eats seafood, and that's tracked explicitly in the book. But while that's happening, Leia's getting out of the shower, and as you
Yeah.
expect to see when you get out of the shower, her dead father, Darth Vader, is there as a Force ghost. and basically tells her, "I've been forgiven by Luke. Why
What
haven't
is your
you forgiven
problem?
me?" Yeah, like I said sorry, and
Yeah, he's like,
it's
ugh.
horrible.
Yeah, he's like almost offended. He's like, "Will you forgive me?" She's like, "No." He's like, "Well, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, what more do I gotta do?"
I've
And
done
then
literally nothing to atone other than throw the guy down the shaft.
she
But
comes down on a weird line too. She's like, "I could forgive you for torture and for Alderaan. But what you did to Han? Like, really? Like, you tortured Han for like an hour. Like, come on."
I'm going to read the passage for everyone
Oh
because it's
yes,
just
please do.
fantastic. "Leia," the figure repeated, "do not fear me. I am forgiven, but I have much that I wish to atone for. I must clear your heart and your mind of anger."
Oh
Like, you don't get to say, "I am forgiven." That's
yeah.
not your call.
The scene after that with Han is pretty funny because she's like, Vader was here, and he's like, "Oh, so you can do that now too." He's like, it's even funnier because I listened to the abridged version after. I read the book and then I listened to the abridged version. I'll give you guys some feedback on that later in case you don't want to read the whole book. But yeah, he's like, "Oh, did you?" She's like, "Yep." It's like, "Oh, okay. Well,
And Leia just
I guess
spends
that's a
the
thing."
rest of the book, any of the chapters that are from her perspective, is like, "Hope you were watching that." Because when he leaves that scene, he's like, "I'll be watching," and it's like, okay,
Okay.
that's creepy. But
Yeah, like, don't.
she like shoots some Imperials. "Hope you were watching that, Dad."
And then he says, "I might not be able to appear again." And if I remember correctly, Obi-Wan says the same thing at the beginning of the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I don't really know why, but Force Ghost kind of just
they have somewhere
Casey,
better to be. They have to go to
yeah.
Abeloth's weird graveyard of Force ghosts.
Avalon's having a big barbecue. Father will be there.
Everyone's going. If you don't let me go,
um,
Leia, you're the worst daughter ever.
oh man, it's so goofy, but it's fun. Um, oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, that whole bit's really strange. And then Canon has like Leia's been pissed at Vader, which I think Canon has actually taken it a bit, more nuanced approach with things. Because did you read Bloodline, Corey?
No.
Okay, well, in Bloodline, like Leia is still she's still, furious at Vader and she's still hiding her identity. But in canon, sorry, in Legends, it's not too long later until Leia's naming a child Anakin.
Yeah,
Um,
the optics on that aren't great.
no, they're not.
Like, what do you tell everyone? Like, oh, Chief of State Leia has named her. Like, Angela Merkel is not going to name her kid Hitler and be like, "Don't worry, I forgave him." Like,
Yeah, especially if he was literally part Hitler too.
uh, but yeah. So
Why not
the
Bale? Like Christ, she says like how Bale will always be my real father. Yet Bale was there. Bale was one going to hover soccer practice and shit. But she names her first kid Anakin. Like if I were Bale
third
and
kid,
non-Force Ghost, oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, third kid.
the family names of Jason and Jaina came up first.
Yeah, of course. But like if I were Bale and Force Ghost Heaven, I'd be or non-Force Ghost Heaven, I'd be pretty pissed.
That's
Like
probably why they did it. Because then, if they named Jason Bale and then Vader's like popping in, like, "Hey, you see you're pregnant again."
what's going on?
Hey, so so how about that name? You got anything? Actually, at
Yeah,
that
it's
point, it would have to be Obi-Wan because Vader is apparently this is the last time Vader can show up, but Obi-Wan still had a few years left in him.
true.
Anakin's been telling me you're having a kid. You won't shut up.
It's hard enough for me with my kid and my non Force Ghost grandparents to like get him away for a week. So imagine if he can just show up second year of the refresher. It's yeah, you might be right. Obi Wan got gets a few ships named after him, which I think is much cooler.
Yeah, he also gets the Kenobi offensive mentioned, which is
Right?
a classic Clone Wars maneuver.
Yes.
But
One thing
go
that's
ahead.
interesting about this time period, and we kind of passed this, is that like this is still before people knew what the Clone Wars,
Yeah,
because the Clone Wars is mentioned, of course, in A New Hope. There are some usually they were told. I had a conversation with Pablo about this on Twitter. I think usually they were told to not mention the Clone Wars. There's one Marvel comic which gets it completely wrong. There's like clones of like Leia and stuff, and it's like the Clone Master. The Clone Masters were making rogue clones of people and stuff. Um, and then there's in Thrawn they talk about Clone Masters as well, and the clones seem to be everyone basically thought the clones were the enemies. And even if you see the movie title Attack of the Clones, that's what you'd think too.
Mm-hmm.
But George pulled a clever one on us, didn't he?
Clever boy. But so the thing that actually makes Gaeriel come around on Luke, that was phrased very poorly.
Not really.
But the thing that makes her change her mind is that Luke goes. So Gaeriel is really good friends with Senator Belden's wife Epi, who has the memory stuff going on, and Luke goes to visit Gaeriel while she's visiting Epi, and figures out that the Empire are the ones that that made her lose her memories and kind of go off. It wasn't a natural thing. So Luke goes in and starts doing some healing things that he apparently learned from Yoda on that weekend retreat he had to Dagobah that one time, where he learned everything about being a Jedi.
Everything ever.
And shows Epi how to heal herself. And eventually she does. She starts coming around. So
and he's so transparent about it. There's literally a line. I can use this lady, and this 160-year-old lady who's like thinks that she's his dead or her dead son and doesn't have her mental fact.
Yeah,
Luke's
Luke's
like, I can use
primary
this
goal
lady to get to Gaeriel.
Yeah, not great.
Buddy, Yoda's probably sitting there on some log, just not impressed, bud.
Yeah, I think he mentions Yoda not being impressed multiple times with anything he does, and just listen to Yoda. Yoda knows what's up.
Yeah,
but
Yoda didn't find it necessary to pop in. I don't know what's up with that.
Gaeriel, on top of not liking Luke, also does really like the Empire. Even though there were purges of people, and that's how Epi's son died, the Empire does like killing civilians. And Gaeriel's still like, yeah, that's fair, because the economy's doing all right. So
and her parents are killed, not necessarily by the Empire, like during the rebellion, like on that planet some time ago. So yeah, I never really got why she's so pro Empire. I guess it's just so much indoctrination. But
yeah,
it's
and eventually she finds out that Epi was actually a freedom fighter against the Empire for Bakura, and Gaeriel comes around. But while that's all happening, the Ssi-ruuk have sent down a shuttle behind the Imperial lines with Imperial permission from Nereus to capture Luke. So there's a brawl in a Tapcaf, basically.
Yeah. Well, Luke's having lunch, basically. Luke's like,
and
well, I
so-
better get some lunch before the big battle, because they know the battle is coming at this point.
And he's starting to cough a lot from the readers know it's from these worms that are in his throat, but he thinks it's from his calcified bones from Palpatine giving him the EST. So
EST. Yeah, because one thing we didn't the book really kind of focuses on the fact that Luke is in really bad shape at this point. Like the first few pages, he's like literally they confine him to a medical bed. So yeah, he's like they talk to about the calcification. It's like, yeah, you will be effed up if you don't get this fixed. And he's like, I'll meditate on the way to the planet and they'll be fine.
Yeah, the parasites are supposed to kill him in like 24 hours. Gaeriel actually gets one, but Nereus vacuums it out of her throat.
Right. Or oxygen's in it, doesn't
Yeah.
he? Like
it's oxygen and then it just falls in the mask, reverse vacuum or something. But so she starts offering to work for the Empire if he'll stop being such a dick. But
like,
Luke is
on for the Empire.
Yeah, Luke gets captured. Him and Dev are the Ssi-ruuk had been testing the way that they could like hook Luke up and get him to attach everything, but Dev is starting to come out of his. He had felt Luke through the Force, and by contacting Luke, he was starting to get past all the brainwashing, even though they kept doing it. So
Mhm.
it was lasting less and less time. But they end up on the ripe with eggs in orbit, and Luke kind of plays dead until he's hooked up in the machine. Then uses mind control on one of the Pwek slaves, and just wrecks everyone in the room except for Dev. And they're having a conversation the whole time about whether he's going to be safe or not. So
Yeah, and he kills a couple of the Ssi-ruuk on the ground, or blue one? No, he kills one on the ground, one. But the thing about that is the Ssi-ruuk think that if they die on a non-consecrated world, that I think they go to, like, Ssi-ruuk hell or something, or their
pretty much,
souls
they don't get
uh,
the eternal afterlife. So that's why they use the Pwek slaves for everything, and
mhm.
attach other people for everything.
Yeah, yeah, so I in the Gaeriel's in the, yeah, so him and Gaeriel are getting a nice lunch. It's kind of annoying because they just come out of nowhere and kind of ruin it, and then, yeah, they yoink him up there.
Yeah, they were finally just starting to get together,
Yeah.
and now he's in space. She's upset on the ground, thinking he's going to die because she knows about the parasites now. But
Mhm.
Luke actually, when he's trying to heal Dev, because the Ssi-ruuk all flee the ship pretty much when they find out Luke's aboard. So the Sri-wur, or ripe with eggs, is
Mhm.
basically empty of any crew other than Luke and Dev, like one or two other people. Luke kills, I think he kills Shtikith, Ivpicus, and Furwarung, all
On the ground or on the
on the
yeah, you're
ship.
right. Yeah, yeah, right.
He beheads another one on the planet, but that
And
was an
Dev is just
unnamed one.
freaking out because he's still like he loves them basically. Like it's
Yeah.
more than just like a service. Like he loves them, and you do kind of feel bad for him. I actually think he's a pretty interesting character. But yeah, and he's just like freaking out. He's like, "Don't, you can't kill them here." And the Ssi-ruuk don't use lethal force either, especially on Luke, because they need um like as many souls as they can get. And well, not for Luke. Luke is needed for the special project, but
Yeah, and when during this fight, because Nereus is sending Luke up to die, as far as he knows, and he basically wants to deal with the Ssi-ruuk. He thinks Luke being on the Ssi-ruuk ship is going to wipe out the Ssi-ruuk because they're all going to get the
mhm,
parasite. So he had given the order to Thanos to destroy the ship with Luke on it because otherwise there'd be uh, contagion everywhere. And
right.
he also tells Thanos to shoot the Flurry, the rebel ship. So
Mhm.
once it's clear that the rebels are, or that the Allied forces are winning the battle against the Ssi-ruuk, and it's just Shriwer left.
Which is pretty
Uh,
quick.
yeah, I think actually the way the book handles the battles is pretty good.
Because
Because
it's
they,
mostly from like Luke inside the because Luke's
yeah,
like basically cutting through the ripe with eggs, trying to find his way to the bridge, and I think he also tries to free every soul he can.
yeah,
Uh, and then you kind of learn because like they're so scared, and this is where like it doesn't feel like like this doesn't feel like an end because most of the fleet retreats. It's a very like Act One victory. You know,
yeah.
it's like the Sluis Vaughn almost. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But
I think
yeah,
they
you don't
do
really
manage to
see
blow up
much
one of
of
the cruisers.
yeah,
Uh, and then they capture the Shriwer because Luke
yep,
had emptied it out. But
and they
Luke
name it
had
the
taken,
Dev.
yeah, Luke had taken the when he was trying to heal Dev, he'd found the two extra presences in himself, which were the parasites. He gets them removed,
Oh yeah,
and
that's actually a pretty cool scene too. You want to talk about that? Like what happens?
yeah,
How
sure,
he gets them removed?
go for it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he's got these two basically bugs inside of him, and he's like he just yeah like Corey said, he basically just thinks he's sick from Palpatine's Force lightning. But at one point, I think he actually passes out, right? And then he wakes up and he can feel these two like
Hmm.
these two little Force presences, kind of chewing inside of him. And I think I think they're like chewing through his lung or something, which is why he's coughing. And he basically makes a scent of blood leading them out of his throat, and then he stomps them. He like
Yeah,
spits them up and stomps them. It's a pretty cool little introspective Force moment. This book has a few of those actually, so not
Yeah.
bad. Good job,
Uh,
Kathy.
so now Luke and Dev are like they're together. He's at some point he says that Dev's apprenticeship is now official or as good as official, and that he's going to start training Dev up as this first new Jedi Knight in his new order.
Yeah.
But was it the Carrick shoots at Sri-Wur and just shakes them all around, basically causes a lot of internal trauma.
Yeah. Then doesn't he get hit by one of the?
Bulkheads or something.
Yeah.
So
But
Dev
regardless,
not in good
he gets
shape.
really badly burnt as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that doesn't last super long.
No.
They
So he
get
does
rescued.
get taken out on the Falcon. So yeah, the so what happens I guess next
Next,
the Falcon comes and escorts them off.
they convince Thanos that they don't need to kill Luke because Luke reaches out through the Force and tells Thanos, "Hey, why
Dude,
are
we
you
had a
doing
meeting
this?"
yesterday. What the heck?
Yeah. uh, and then they get brought on. Luke is in the Falcon getting healed, and Thanos basically surrenders the ship.
Hmm.
So the rebels now have control over the Carrick. They kind of put it in low orbit over the Bakuran city because they're afraid of having to take on the
Yeah.
3,000
Yeah, they're like, we can
stormtroopers.
blast you from
Yeah. So they go and they start threatening Nereus again,
here. Hmm.
who thinks
And
still that Luke is dead.
yeah, and then so basically they come out, they think Luke is dead, and then when Luke walks down the ramp, Nereus is like, oh crap, he's got those bugs in him. So he tries to shoot him, and it's such a strange moment because Luke talks earlier during the first battle where Wedge comes very close to dying and is only saved because the Falcon comes. He talks about how to what are the names of the planet, or like the flurry is from a faction that helped the Alliance.
Virgilian
Yeah, it's
free
the Virgilian, right?
traders. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Luke tells one of the officers on that ship that he can't use his force basically against enemy ships because to do so would be aggressive. And then when Nereus sees Luke coming down the ramp, he fires two shots at him, and Luke, the first one misses, and then Luke hits the second one back and kills him. Which, like, I don't know, that doesn't seem very Jedi-like to me. Like, I feel like it's an effort to redirect a laser bolt
Yeah.
right back to the person who fired it. He could have easily put that into the ground. I mean,
Especially
Luke is
with
not.
how Luke isn't like super out of it at this point.
Mhm,
And so that's like the hardest thing for him to possibly do in the moment, and it just
exactly.
he does it.
Yeah, that's like
Which,
yeah, it's like technically not against his religion.
yeah,
Force Jesus isn't going to be too pleased with that one, I don't think.
Yoda
um,
is Yoda.
yeah,
Is there a Force
is Yoda
Jesus other than Yoda? I think it's Yoda.
Anakin maybe?
No, I don't think Anakin's Force Jesus.
Mm, I don't know. Maybe that'll be something to discuss when we get to like Fate of the Jedi or something.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah,
He
Jason's
takes the
pretty
galaxy's
close.
sins upon himself and
Yeah.
sacrifices himself to himself.
Oh, no, it's either Kenneth Hamner or who's that guy that we were making fun of the other day? The old man who Bespin, or I don't remember if it was
Oh,
actually Bespin.
Streen.
Yeah, Streen. Once we get to the Jedi Academy trilogy, lots of new great characters.
Jedi Surge is going to be the best one. But yeah, so they're on the planet now. Everyone's together, all their characters except for the Dead Sea Ruby, and
Yeah. Oh yeah,
the
and Ord dies off screen, which is doesn't Ord get killed
yeah,
off
Orn
screen?
gets killed off screen because Leia is Leia's whole subplot during all this is she's with Yorg and Orn, so the
Mhm.
Prime Minister and the old Senator dude, and
Yeah.
they're driving around town. And Leia's asking them about whether they'd want to be with the Rebellion or the Empire if they had a
Yeah.
choice, and they
Yep.
have this device that allows them to block any surveillance equipment so they could talk freely. But
Mhm.
they notice they're getting chased by Imperial speeders, who then attack them. So Leia gets arrested, Yor gets arrested, and Orn gets arrested. But
Mhm.
Orn is like he's way too old and way too sick. So he
Uh-huh.
just dies of basically shocked, and he dies off screen. So the next time it's like, oh yeah, he's dead.
And then they take Leia to like a log cabin, basically, is kind of how they described it.
Yeah, and his wife, Orn's wife, is the one that leads the Bakurans in the uprising. So she's the one that like disarms or like holds Nereus hostage.
Right.
But I guess they never did take his gun because he does shoot Luke.
No, I think he grabs the gun from he takes one gun because he's got one pointed at Gaeriel, I think, and then
Right.
she grabs it from him when Epi comes in the door or something. I don't remember, but yeah, it's basically there's like while this is all happening, like while the fight against the Ssi-ruuk is happening, there is like a bit of a rebellion going on as well.
Mhm.
And there's like because the Empire has started. There's like a little subplot that goes nowhere about the Alliance, two Alliance troops killing some Imperials or Bakurans. That doesn't really go anywhere, but the Empire is like stamping down pretty hard on everything. They're like not letting people leave their house.
Yeah, Nereus had been
They're just
trying to incite the rebels into killing civilians, essentially, because
yeah.
he knew there were some on shore leave at the spaceport. He sent a bunch of Bakuran, like he paid a bunch of Bakurans to go and
Yeah.
essentially hang around and
Rabble rousers.
harass them. So they took a shot at some of the rebel soldiers, and then the rebel soldiers killed a few Bakurans who had been
Mhm.
shooting at them and had been sent by the
All
Imperials
right,
to
it was
shoot at them.
yeah. Yeah, so while this is all happening, there's like a big kind of rebellion going on, and it's led by Epi, the 30 some odd year old woman. She's like, "Oh, what I'd give to be 80 right now."
If I were as young as Pelion.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
But so after this, Gaeriel sees that her new best friend Luke is still alive. She thought he was dead too.
yeah.
And they kiss because obviously.
I think
But
I should just read it, Corey.
yeah,
I've got the line here if you'd like.
go for
Let
it.
me just hold on, let me just pull it up. I accidentally closed the book. Do I have it on our sheet here? Trust me, guys, it's worth. Okay, here we go. He pushed because so basically they talk, and it's not going to work out because I think Gabriel is still a little against his religion.
Well, the main thing is that she wants to stay on Bakura. Uh,
Yeah.
and Luke was thinking that if she was like the envoy between the Alliance and the Bakurans, then they could be
Hmm.
together. But she's like, no, I'm gonna stay here. But
Yeah. All right. Let me read the passage. Um. Okay. Just guys, just get ready for this because it's a bit long. Um. So I understand. Disappointed in the end, he rested his elbows on the hologram table, shifted. The right one still ached where he'd wrenched it, and breathing deeply hurt. He'd spend the entire hyperspace run back to Endor and another healing trance. Are you taking prisoners of war? She asked quietly. We don't do that. It would make liars of us and lies of our goals. Every trooper we send home will tell 3 or 4 others that the Alliance, well, that we had them in our power, but we let them go. Luke, she whispered. She laid her fingertips on his shoulder. I'm sorry. He felt the softening he'd hoped for. Too late. He turned to her slowly and fully opened himself to the Force, hoping to make the sensation last. This time, she wouldn't raise her defenses. It's a really weird way to talk about
sound
trying to
wise to
seduce.
lower your defenses.
Yeah. Anyway, what for? He asked. This has been a victory for humankind. Her cheeks colored. I want to be your ally, Luke, but from a distance. He pushed back a quiet desolation that threatened to send him over another emotional brink, which is a pretty dramatic way to talk about being friend zoned by a woman you met 2 days ago.
Keep in
He
mind
mustn't
that this is right after Dev Sibwara has died. He
just
has no
passed away.
apprentice. This guy who he thought would be part of the future of the Jedi Order with him is dead, and this is the worst thing to happen.
Yeah.
Continue.
He mustn't think of spending forever alone. From a distance, he agreed hesitantly, touching her face. But just once, from here. And then they kiss. And then he lets the moment flood his perception, petal warm lips in the steep, sweet warmth of her life presence. And then he just runs away, basically.
Yeah. So much
Forever.
later, Gaeriel marries Thanos.
Yep.
So screw you, Luke.
Yeah. And she got the Imperial she always wanted.
Yep. The Imperial he
And
can never
then
be.
Luke never really gets so Luke meets Mara, of course, in the Thrawn trilogy, but there's not a lot of romance there. And you put a tweet out, which I agree with, which is probably why Luke and Mara work at all.
Yeah, because
Um,
Mara was introduced by Timothy Zahn and wasn't intended to be a romantic interest for Luke.
right. And there's you can tell that because there's even one part. I forget which book it is. I think it's the Jedi Academy trilogy where Luke calls Lando and he's basically sleeping with Mara because Mara
Yeah.
answers the phone and she's wearing like just Lando's shirt. And then Zahn, when he wrote the Thrawn duology, tries to uh, he tries to like cover up because then the relationship between the two is forming. And he's like, "Oh, we were just deep undercover trying to find George Cardass." Like,
If
I
that's
think
what he calls
Lando's
it,
yeah,
I
deep
bet they were
undercover.
deep undercover.
Yeah, looking for George Cardass. Is that what the kids are calling it nowadays? My parents aren't here. My parents aren't home. Do you want to come over and try to track George Cardass?
When
I
she
hear he's
texts
at
you that her parents are
Thrawn.
out, but George Cardass is home.
Oh god. Yeah, even Luke and Mara is a little cringy at some point. She just
Yeah.
calls him half of the
Farm
relationship
boy.
is her crawling. Yeah, exactly. Exactly what I was gonna say. Her calling him farm boy. Ugh. Especially where Luke's like, he's a short guy. He's got a bowl cut. He's like in his 50s when he's dating Mara, who's like being like strikingly beautiful. So off topic, but
So, Thanos resigns his commission with the Empire, defects to the rebels, and basically helps Bakura run
yeah.
their defenses. And that's basically the end of the book. I don't think we missed any of the major points.
They renamed the ripe with eggs the Subwara, which is kind of terrible. It like goes up there the Anakin Solo or like the Star Destroyer being named the Anakin Solo as like terrible names. This is the place. This is the ship that he suffered on for years, and that like his family were probably in Tecton, and now it's named. He was burnt badly on it. And now he's named after him. I don't know. It's
And
just
to everyone else, he was just the guy who helped them do it too. So it doesn't work on any level really.
yeah. No, it's really yeah. It's terrible. Like everyone remembers Dev as like the one first saying ripe with eggs, and it's a little depressing, I guess.
Oh, there's another thing I want to bring up about that, where Gaeriel asks about Dev at one point when he's getting treated by the Imperial medic, and was asking something about like, did he change sides or something? And Luke just says, "Yeah, he changed his mind." Nothing about like he was getting brainwashed or
Mind
forced to do it
screwed,
against
yeah.
his will. It was he changed his mind, which is
Yeah.
just the least
Yeah.
convincing argument you could.
Oh, really? So, yeah, because like, what actually happened totally, like, it makes him innocent for everything that happened. He changed his mind? That's like yeah, he
It's
was
basically
willingly doing
the
this.
Vader defense.
Yeah. When he's, like, got a legitimate thing, and yeah, it's it's
Well,
pretty crap.
when the rebels were trying all the Imperials for war crimes and everything, there was so many of them like, yeah, I did that, but I changed my mind. And then they got let out.
Yeah, or like the Kip Durin defense. "Oh, I was possessed by a Sith Lord when I blew up the Karita system and killed billions."
And
It's
people
a good
spend the
one.
next 20 years not trusting him, even though he
Yeah,
literally had nothing.
yeah.
Well, he was susceptible to dark
That's
side
like
control, but still.
Dala, like okay, so when Dala becomes chief of state, and this is like what, 30 years later, 35 years later, when Dala becomes chief of state, she's real hard on Kip basically for what he did at Krita. It's like, do you not remember you literally tried to bomb an academy with children and like were blowing things up and like genociding planets for a while there?
Changed my mind.
Yeah, changed my mind. Kip, on the other hand.
I've been forgiven. Why are you forgiving me? This is your fault.
Oh man. Um, what was so? I forget what point we were on before I drastically derailed the conversation.
I don't think we were on a point at this point.
Do you want to talk about history of like Luke's apprentices and like how Dev probably got off easy?
Uh, I think we should save that for one of the Jedi Search or whatever, the
Okay,
Apprentice Truth. Could we can bring Dev back up at that point,
I
and
can't
we'll
wait.
we'll make sure we do. But I think that's
Yeah,
that discussion probably fits a little bit better in that. But
yeah. Suffice to say, Luke has in Legends. Like, you think Luke was a bad teacher to Kylo or Ben? Like, Luke makes some poor choices in Legends when he's trying to figure this stuff out. And to be fair, he's trying to figure it all out on his all out on his own. But yeah,
yeah, I
what do
think
you
him
think?
and Corin even have like a rundown of all of his students and whether or not it was a successful thing. But we already
What do you
talked
think?
about
What
the
do you think?
ages.
Luke as Dev as Luke's student. What do you think? What do you think that looks like?
I'm trying to think of who he's most like out of the students that actually stick around.
Yeah, me
Because
too. Because he's got that dark past, right?
he's got the
Maybe like
dark
a
past, but he's
Tahiri.
really.
He reminds me a
Uh,
lot of Tahiri, just because of like he was like.
I think he's a bit happier than that. Like he's
I agree.
kind of a
He's a lot more
positive
hopeful.
guy,
Yeah.
where it even shows up when he's not like mind controlled to say positive things,
Mhm.
but he's like, "Oh, this isn't so bad." And
Yeah, he's kind of like a Kip, actually. I know we just mentioned him, but
yeah, I think Kip Duran kind of works, or even like younger Jason when he's
yeah,
still a happier person
yeah,
and
because
just
he
loves
is. You're
animals
right.
and
He is
everything.
so like happy-go-lucky, and
Yeah.
then he gets just like all of his body burned terribly.
Mm. But
Um, we don't know how powerful he is either. We know his
no,
was or some sort of force sensitive, but we don't know how powerful he was.
he
But
wouldn't have had that much training, but he was still able to like consciously
yeah,
control the force to do the attachment stuff.
hmm,
So it
yeah,
wouldn't have been he would have been at least better
yeah,
than Tion and Stream.
yeah. Listen, Stream could predict weather.
That's true.
I don't think you realize how useful that is.
The Jedi
Like,
meteorologist we all need.
yeah, or like Corrin can't even move things. What a loser! And Corrin's that was always so weird because Corrin can't move things, and then his daughter Gisela can, but his son can't. Can't use
Yeah,
telekinesis.
because I mean, Marek's family, like the Terex, didn't have any force
Yeah,
sensitivity in there.
no,
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the major points for the book.
yeah.
I guess we'll just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in like I guess
Do
the
it.
rest of the
Yeah,
stream and then in future streams.
yeah. So what we're gonna do today, I want to talk a little bit about the audiobook. We'll do that later. What we're gonna be doing for every stream is we're going to be ranking. We're gonna do like a running list of where the book ranks. So obviously, right now, Truce at Bakura is the only book we've read, so it's both the best and the worst. But if we, 100 episodes in, we'll uh, we'll be talking.
Yeah,
We're
so
all no, go ahead.
uh, I was just gonna say if we want to keep like we're definitely internally gonna need to keep a Google Doc or something for that because
Yeah.
there's no way we're gonna remember everything. But if we want to make that like publicly accessible for people to look at, maybe
Oh,
we'll
good
keep it
idea.
on, have it as a thing to put out on the stream layout, maybe so people can see it
Mhm.
when we're doing it.
That's a great idea. We should. I mean, we should also probably just we'll give a review too, I guess, and just our general thoughts
Yeah,
because we did. I don't want to speak for you. Like we haven't been joking about the book because it's a little silly, but I do enjoy it. I think
yeah,
it's a fun book. And then we'll talk about also some of the later appearances, stuff that appeared in this book. This will be. We did mention this somewhat throughout, and for certain books, this will be like much more of a obviously the Thrawn trilogy. Like the things we see there really show up again. And then if you guys have any questions or comments, we'll also take that as well.
yeah.
And if you are watching this as a video, if you didn't pick up, we do stream this live as well. So do you want to talk about your general review of the book, Corey?
Uh, I mean, I think it does a good job at setting up the period. So it is. We were talking about this a little bit before before the stream, but it is a good place for people who haven't read any Star Wars books before,
Yeah.
where if they're looking to get into anything that happened after the original trilogy and they want to get into Legends books, it is a good one to start with
Yep.
chronologically. And like there's nothing in it that really presupposes you need
No, there's
or that
no.
you have a lot of prior knowledge.
No.
So it's really good for that. Uh, we've done our nitpicking throughout on like some of the stuff that we thought
Totally.
was off-putting, but there's nothing that's like super jarring. So
No, I
there's nothing
mean
that
the
really
Bantam
brings you
era
out
is
of it.
all like this.
Yeah,
And like for me, like you can make fun. Like all of this is really goofy, but it kind of adds to my enjoyment in a way for these books. And some of that is nostalgia, but I don't know. I find an enjoyable little adventure. It is in the end, not much changes in the universe. Luke doesn't get a new apprentice. He doesn't get a new girl. Han and Leia, their relationship doesn't change much.
the
They get a new,
Siruvi don't invade.
yeah. Do you want to talk about that now as well?
uh,
Because, or do you want to finish your ranking or your review
well,
first?
I think I've pretty much covered my opinion on it. If you want to say yours, then we can go into future appearances and all that.
Yeah, same. I think I don't want to give a number for it, but it's a. I would recommend it. Whenever somebody asks me, and I get this question a lot, where should I start with Legends? I always I will recommend you read the Thrawn trilogy first, just because some people don't like the New Republic era. It's my favorite, so if this time period interests you, you might as well just start with this book and
Yeah,
then move chronologically. And then after this is at least read the first 4 X-wing books, and
yeah.
then
Like if you're looking
yeah,
to get into the broader expanded universe, then I think Truce of Bakura is a good place to start. If you're looking to just read a Star Wars book and you're probably going to stop with that, then I think Thrawn
yeah,
trilogy is probably edges it out
definitely,
for that. But I think they're
yeah,
both good for.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about later appearances. The Ssi-ruuk, um, despite them being kind of built up as this big invasion force, they don't really appear much. In X-Wing, they talk about how if I forget, I think it's Wedge to Corrin, basically, if you mess this up, we'll have you doing Ssi-ruuk cleanup duty, kind of suggesting that the New Republic has managed to, I guess, once they get all their stuff together after and their fleet repaired, they are hunting down some Ssi-ruuk outposts, and then until that, it's the Force Heretic 1 and 2 from the New Jedi Order. The Puek and the Ssi-ruuk actually in Bakura, actually play a fairly big role in that.
Yeah, so that's
Um,
about 20 years later because the Yuzon Vong War is
yeah, it's
25 to 29
25, I think.
ABY.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's probably about
Oh,
22
yeah,
years
it's
later.
towards the end. Yeah.
And I think it's actually established somewhere. I forget where. So I might just be making this up, but I think it's the New Republic go on. They try to go on this offensive against the Siruvi, but when they get to Siruvi space, it's already been wiped out by the Empire of the Hand.
Oh,
So
right. I think that's an Essential Guide to Warfare, maybe.
yeah, so that
Um,
basically took care of them.
yeah. And that I think that's a sensible, I think, conclusion, or like a sensible explanation,
Yeah,
because the Empire of the Hand, basically anything that would threaten their existence, and they would have been kind of geared up around this point. So
yeah. It's a good way to explain the fact that you already had those 20 years filled with all the galactic threats you could really fill it with,
yeah,
and then these guys never showed up again. So
do you, I would like to summarize Force Heretic 1 and 2, but I can't
I
really.
can't either.
All I remember is I
Gaeriel
think,
Captison's daughter shows up, and
isn't that when they're looking for Zonoma Seacont to go there?
I don't think they're looking for Zonema Seacot yet, are they? They might
I
be.
can't remember. But basically, the Puek have tried to like overthrow, because the Puek are the slave race, and at that point they've tried to overthrow the their oppressors, basically. But yeah, and then the Vahang are involved. And we'll get there when we get there. It's there's no point of giving you guys a half explanation. But Bakura generally also, they do appear in other material after they were established here. Like, of course, they're referenced in the X-wing novels, which come chronologically. Like, it talks about how certain members of Rogue Squadron were part of the Bakura campaign, um, or fought against the Ssi-ruuk. But the biggest way that they're brought in would be the Corellian trilogy. which is basically Han, Leia, and the kids have a bad trip to Corellia. Do you want to talk about that one, Corey?
Yeah, basically the New Republic forces are all busy during the Corellian crisis when they're having the battle for Center Point. So they call up the B team, which are the Bakura team, and so Gaeriel shows up. She'd married Thanos, but Thanos was dead by that point. This is like 19 ABY. So
Yeah, or 16 maybe, or 19. Yeah.
So yeah,
around then.
about 15 years after Truce at Bakura, and Gaeriel's in command of those Bakuran forces. Because is she prime minister at that point?
She was prime minister, and then during re-election, her husband gets sick, so she loses. Peter gets sick, so she loses, and now I guess she's like Luke reaches out to her, and he's basically like, "Yeah, I know this will really screw you over, but we need to borrow your ships."
Yeah, so they
Because
go there. Akbar eventually shows up to the battle, but during the battle, Gaeriel dies. Or not all, but a lot of the Bakuran ships get exploded. I forget
yeah,
now, but we'll get to those books as well, and we'll have a bunch of wonderful callbacks to this episode. So
yeah, because basically, wasn't it like the New Republic stuff was pretty peaceful there, so I think they're like refitting their ships basically, which
their
it's gotta
entire
be one
fleet
fleet.
is
There's
out
gotta
of
be one
commission.
fleet. But yeah, so she dies. Peter dies as well before. You don't get anything else of him, and they do have a child, and we'll talk more about her. At least one, I think only one.
Yeah, they just have the one that we know about, but
And what's the name of the Bakuran ship too? You made a funny joke
oh
about
yeah, so
off stream.
the names for the Bakuran ship classes are the Watchkeeper class and the Namana class. But the Namana is the name of a fruit, so it'd basically be like if we had an apple class cruiser. It just sounds super lame.
Or like they make wine out of it too, because remember
Yeah,
he does like so it's like yeah the grape
the
cruiser
grape
is
cruiser.
grape 1 and grape 2 just came out of hyperspace.
They're gonna ferment us.
Yeah. But yeah, so things really don't go that well for Bakura. I mean, they do join the New Republic, and I think things are pretty peaceful there. They have what sounds like free elections and stuff, but
Well,
yeah.
you also you were talking about earlier before the stream how Bakura shows up in a lot of video games too. Like there's a mission there in Jedi Academy
Mhm.
where you're blowing up
Isn't
the
there a super
facility.
weapon too at yeah, so you go there with what's his name?
Jaden Core,
Yeah, Jaden. Mm.
and
And then in Rogue Squadron 3, I think, right?
uh, one of them, two or three. I
Is it
think
the
it might be two.
is it the super weapon you're blowing up at Bakura? I don't remember. But yeah,
But
you go there multiple times, and it was in one of the old Clone Wars games and Empire at War, I think. So it's basically a planet that, and Legends was good about that. Something would get mentioned, kind of even just planets would make its way. Kind of if you need to throw a planet name in there, it'd be one that existed. And it's even made its way back into new canon, though I don't think we know anything. Just it's been on a map, I believe.
photos bring up in the chat something that we the last thing I think we were going to bring up in the later appearances thing, which was
Hmm.
the interdiction field, or the ability to
Yeah,
get through the interdiction field. We have
yeah,
the
it's the hymns. I think it's
yeah
called
hymns,
the
but I forget what it stood for.
hyperspace inertial
Hyperwave
momentum
yeah,
sustainer. I
something.
think.
So they could go through interdictors, which was
Yeah, and
cool
that's
for them.
important because of Centerpoint Station. But yeah, they also have. We didn't talk about either. There's a few weird technologies on Bakura. There's the seemingly advanced cloning. There's the inertial momentum sustainer, which can basically help you get through interdiction fields. Which is yeah, that's part of the reason why the Bakurans are involved. And then there's also the. Did we talk about the bubbles they make? The audio
Yeah, we talked about
bubbles.
it with
Okay.
them getting arrested when Orn
Okay.
dies off
Cool.
screen.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, and that's basically mostly it.
And yeah, so I guess the last two things here that we're planning are we'll open it up to any audience questions that there are right now, and then there's
Mhm.
going to be a little bit of a discussion later about we wanted to talk about Marvel Star Wars 108 and a bit
Yeah,
of other
yeah.
Legend stuff that's coming.
Yep. If we have any questions, anyone have any questions or just general thoughts? whether it was now or because I know some people did. Some people messaged me. Oh, I'll talk about the audiobook as well.
Right, yeah. And while you guys get your
Well, you
questions
guys
in
are writing
there,
your questions, yeah.
I'll keep
So
track.
the Star Wars audiobooks are kind of a mixed bag. Uh, the early Bantam era books generally get really poor abridgments, and for those who don't, an unabridged audiobook is literally just the words read by, somebody, a narrator with usually music and sound effects in the back. Unabridged audiobooks abridged audiobooks make the book much shorter. So the Truce at Bakura is a 3 hour and 45 minute audiobook, which is really really short by audiobook standards. Something like I think Thrawn Book One, for example, is 14 or 15 hours. So it's a pretty significant abridgment. They do have Anthony Heald, who did most of the Bantamera books, but it actually kind of works for Truce at Bakura because it actually, unlike say Star by Star, which uh, cuts out the entire Battle of Coruscant, Truce at Bakura has mostly everything. So if you want to read this book and if you have a free Audible credit, or you just drive a lot, then I would actually recommend this audiobook. If you want to get the whole picture, you do need to read it, but you get most of the major plot elements here. But going forward, say for next week when we do, or 2 weeks from now when we do X-Wing Rogue Squadron, I would not do the audiobook for that. The narration and the music is good, but until the Thrawn trilogy, that's when you guys can jump back on audiobooks. Yeah, audio
Uh,
cassettes. They're the same. They're all from the 90s. Certain books got better ones, like the Thrawn trilogy got a nice unabridged version with Mark Thompson, and yeah, some of the other ones did too. Like the New Jedi Order is all pretty rough. By Legacy of the Force, they got really good. They're still abridged, but the abridgment is, and then Fate of the Jedi is all unabridged.
all right, so I've copied in the questions to the Google Docs there.
Okay.
Anything you want to take a look at?
Oh yeah, done there. Um, let's see. So that's a good question. Joel has a question that I meant to ask you, Corey, because I didn't know this, but you did. How far does the Leia not forgive Anakin thing span in the old EU, starting with this book?
So what I was thinking, or my recollection of it, was that uh, she finally forgives him in the book Tatooine Ghost, which is about
Hmm.
4 years after this book. It's right before the Thrawn trilogy, where Han and Leia are going to Tatooine. I think they're getting it from Tatooine, where they're going to pick up a painting of an Alderaanian scene called Killick Twilight,
Mm,
uh, where Troy
of
Denning
course.
wanted Killicks in another place.
Oh,
Uh,
Troy.
but yeah, so it's about 4 years later where she finally seems to come to terms with it and forgive him.
And then,
And
of course,
after Vader had already decided he was forgiven, so it's clearly.
Corey, can you just answer a question? I just got a call. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, Photo was asking, what do you think about how most of the rebel ships died? I mean, it was definitely a cheap shot by the Imperials to kill the Flurry there. If that's what you're referring to. So, I don't know if we really hear about the other rebel ships getting blown up. I don't think they do. Flurry dies, but the rest seem to be okay, or at least die in a less conspicuous manner. Yeah, Wikipedia says several capital ships died, so I guess some of the other ones died, but it wasn't that important. But yeah, I think we kind of covered that with the other parts. Brandon's asking, do you think it holds up to the extent of the EU and current canon? I mean, the review parts there, I think we kind of covered that it works as a good introduction to things, but the uh, there are some things that if you read this and you read a lot of other bits of Star Wars, there are some inconsistencies, uh, but they're usually relatively small. There's nothing that really stands out as being super inconsistent. Uh, Obviously, it doesn't fit with new Disney canon because it's an entirely separate timeline. So Ssi-ruuk have even less of an impact there than they would with that. But and as we were saying, it sets up for some stuff that comes in later with Gaeriel's involvement in the Corellian trilogy, with the Ssi-ruuk's involvement in the New Jedi Order. But basically, the New Jedi Order brought in as much as they could from uh, every other bit of Star Wars, like the Avitha come up there as well, and they tried to fit in as much as they could. So I'm just gonna
Sorry, I'm
see.
back now.
Okay,
I
you're back.
apologize for that.
No problem.
Yeah.
So we're just talking, answering Brandon's question. Do you think it holds up with the extent of EU and current canon? So, you want to add anything on that?
It's like as enjoyable as a building perspective, and like a lot of the stuff that made a Star Wars EU book a Star Wars EU book was kind of it was kind of developed like bit by bit, so it reads much differently than a modern EU book. But yeah, it's still fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, uh, there was kind of three different periods. It seems like with a lot of the EU with Legends, where there was
Totally.
the really early stuff where it was just Wild West of whatever
The legends of
they
the
could put
legends,
in.
basically.
Like, yeah, Marvel Star Wars kind of fits into that, and then
Hmm.
some of the earlier like little one-off adventures where there were kind of like vignettes in the Star Wars universe, but there wasn't any idea that there would be or should be an overarching
Right, like
plot
the
to
daily
it.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then you get to like the Thrawn trilogy, Truce at Bakura,
Yeah, like Bantamera.
X-wing. Yeah, they started doing more of uh, more consistent overall plots, but still not really going for much character development in the long term. Like it's still Imperial Menace of the Week or Monster of the Week kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Then you get to an intentional change with New Jedi Order, where they
Yeah.
wanted to unify stuff as much as they could and have it all working towards this one major threat.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think Truce at Bakura really shows itself. Like it
Yeah,
really fits into that second period of stuff.
and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's almost pulpy. Like,
Yeah,
Timothy Zahn, for example, has said how if it were up to him, he would never kill a main Star Wars character, including Chewbacca, including Mara Jade, because to him it is like, and basically at its heart, Star Wars EU and Star Wars movies are adventure series, um, and there is a yeah. So this, you're right. This definitely falls into a a it's a product of its time. It is different than so like I'm trying to think that what major characters died in the Bantam era. We had a few rebels die. Does Crix Dean die? Doesn't he die
is
in
he dies in
Darksaber? Is that
Dark
Crix Dean?
Saber?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But even Mon Mothma isn't killed outright. They were very they would introduce characters and kill them, but even like fan favorites like Corn Horn or whatever, they would leave them alone. So
yeah,
this does feel like it was very rare for a character to be killed, and it was usually pretty light. It was much more similar to like what you'd see with like the Indiana Jones expanded universe, compared to like say the new EU, which definitely feels like it's just different. It's a lot more fun in a way,
yeah.
not in a negative or a positive way, but
The by the time NJO started, there was like a pretty clear agreement among a lot of the authors
mhm,
and Lucasfilms that nothing was really happening anymore. Like
mhm,
they told the same story a bunch of times, and it was just
yeah,
how many ways can you have a different Imperial come in and do nothing? And the characters weren't really going anywhere anymore. So it was kind of their choices were to kind of tread water and just keep doing the same thing, and that would fall off, or
yeah,
to go into something that had a bit more of a lasting impact and where the stakes got raised a bit.
totally. I just want to say, someone said Darksaber is a cautionary tale against lying in your resume. The sleep. That's funny. But and I think they are right, and that is kind of why, like, you see with, like, the Legacy era, like Fate of the Jedi and Legacy of the Force, the characters are a bit too old, and it feels like they've done a little bit too much, and that is kind of because the EU spent a lot of time, like, meandering around, with, like, doing stuff like, you know, I'm trying to think of, like, a good example of something that took a really long, like, even just you add in, it's not only the fact that you have these stories, but the fact that you have to have time between these stories, between these conflicts. So, you have like Dark Fleet Crisis, Corellian Trilogy, like all of that, like it just takes up time. And now you have Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, and Luke's like nearly 60 and Lando's 70. Han is super old. And but yeah, so you're right. By the time they did start trying to do stuff, there'd been a lot of kind of
Yeah,
Corellian trilogies.
by 45 ABY, you have Luke, Lando, Leia, Han. They're all still Wedge. They're all still alive,
Yeah,
and they were afraid to kill them off because they were the movie characters. Chewbacca was the only one of the really major movie characters that
yeah.
died. Because like Akbar became an important EU character, but in the
But
movies
he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't.
he was very small part in the movie that only really
Yeah,
became popular as a meme.
yeah.
Uh, so he died. But then you have for the next generation of that family, you have Anakin, Jason, Jaina, and Ben. And by the end of the EU books, they'd killed off Anakin and Jason already.
hmm
So that's half of the characters gone.
It is still a bit weird too because like Jaina's what 30 by Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, and they talked it like when Luke and Leia, or sorry, when Han and Leia talk to her, it's like she's still a teenager.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just I don't know. Like I love it for what it is, and I love books like this, but there is kind of a real tonal shift in Kura coming out in the new EU, and I there there ever will be.
Yeah.
So for that reason, yeah. I guess we got more questions.
Joel
Uh,
Davis, how do you feel about feel overall about the Empire and Rebellion teaming up with each other?
it's almost like it's not the Empire teaming up; it's like Imperials on this planet. Like
Yeah.
there's no, it doesn't feel like the Empire, although they do have this big ass Stormtrooper Legion and stuff. Um, yeah, it's like this planet doing whatever it needs to do with the Alliance, and for that, I think it's pretty cool. It's interesting. It's an interesting take on like Backwaters Empire, what it was like.
Yeah, it was a kind of a case study for how a planet would join the rebellion. Like you have
hmm
the Imperial officer that defects and kind of shows what he does or doesn't like about the Empire, where he wasn't like
Yeah,
totally out on the system, but pragmatically it just made no sense to try to support it anymore, and for his own
yeah.
personal reasons. Then you have the locals kind of rising up against it. You have a governor who was trying to crack down on it,
hmm
and so it wasn't really them working together. It was probably something that was happening in a lot of places in the galaxy at any time.
Yeah. And I do like one thing that I like is even when they are working together and like in good faith, there's even still moments where they each other. Like one thing we didn't mention was the computer system that the Flurry has. It's like the TAC computer, the tactical computer.
Hmm.
And at one point, they're doing like a battle simulation. I don't remember if it's on that tactical computer or another one. And Han is like, well, the reason why you have the battle being projected like this is because you've put all the X-wings in the deadliest positions. So like the Empire is still having their like inherent biases. And then he's like, well, when you actually mix X-wings and TIE fighters together, like when you use our fighters' strengths and weaknesses, then I thought that was pretty cool. Like anytime you have X-wings and TIE fighters flying together, it's pretty cool in my opinion.
Hmm. And oh, my favorite line from the book, if I can find it.
Oh please,
But
I know exactly the one.
come on.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. One TIE fighter went to the Alliance as booty.
One TIE fighter as booty. Beautiful.
That's really screw the Shriwer. No one
Yeah,
ever hears about that again.
I
But
know.
that TIE
Or even
fighter
the
becomes a hero of
Defiance
the
or
legends.
whatever. Also, they're like, we were going to talk about one way that the universe is different is just scale at this point.
Yeah.
Like the one Carrick is, even though the Alliance doesn't keep it in the end, it's like the anchor of the current defense fleet. I think anyway. Um,
And where
they
the
talk
Endor
about
fleet for the Imperials is basically like the biggest
yeah,
Imperial fleet in the galaxy,
yeah,
or the majority
exactly.
of their galactic forces.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so it's Star Wars authors hadn't figured out a sense of scale, and they still do have that issue. Like when we read X-Wing, I've kind of highlighted a bunch of points where, Star Wars is on a pretty small scale, both on like an individual battle and the universe, where it's like, yeah, the Empire has a dozen Star Destroyers left or whatever. Um, but I think they did a good job as the time went on. They did a good job, and this book has some good parts too, like, they talk about 10,000 Imperial planets, which to me doesn't sound that far off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you look at the scale of combat in like Truce of Bakura or even the Thrawn trilogy, where like
Mhm.
Thrawn's main force of 6 Star Destroyers was wreaking
Yeah,
havoc on the galaxy. Then you look at Dark Empire, where it's like this system has
thousands
17
of ships.
SSDs,
Yeah, exactly. The Essential Guide to Warfare
35,000
didn't
Star Destroyers.
didn't yeah, the Essential Guide to Warfare did a really, really good job, I think, of taking all of that and helping it to make sense.
Yeah.
Um, Even everything from, like, how the Alliance, because yeah, the number 25,000 Star Destroyers, why not throw more in Endor? Well, the Essential Guide to Warfare gives you, explanations, and it really helps you understand how the Empire fractured so quickly when they've got so many ships, like, all the ships that were lost due to infighting and all the ships that were jumped on the Alliance side,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, the Essential Guide to Warfare, really helped with that, and the new canon is really gonna need that help at some point too.
Yeah.
'Cause they did it in, like, a year, like, in the new canon. Basically, the Empire defeated in a year. But there's different circumstances.
Well, it used to be a very like the those sources did a good job of cleaning it up, but it was a pretty clear division between
Totally.
minimalists and maximalists in
Mhm.
whoever was writing
Totally.
certain sources. But
Yeah. When you read Thrawn, you see Thrawn as the Empire, like, you don't realize all these warlords are running around and stuff, so and
mhm.
then you read, like, the Thrawn duology, for example, outright states that, like, the Pelion even says specifically the Empire had 25,000 Star Destroyers. So that is kind of a study of how Zahn kind of adapted to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Black Fleet Crisis when they're talking about all the new class ships, like the Nebula class Star Destroyer. I think they explicitly mentioned that there were less than 10 made. Some
Yeah,
very small number. It's like,
and
okay,
they're
this
making
is,
1 a year, basically, I
yeah.
think they
So
say.
it doesn't quite add up.
Same with it's the same with the MC-90, they say it took, like, or in, I think in Jedi Academy, they go to, when they go to Mon Cal, they're like, "Yeah, we're getting a Mon Cal cruiser out every 6 months or something." It's like, that is not enough. You are gonna need way more. Do
Yeah. Uh, okay, so
you wanna do
uh,
George's question too? He asked about special guests.
yeah, so that's I think the last one for Truce Bakura we have here. But I have a
Okay,
question about the future live streams. Do you guys plan on having special guests on to discuss the books with you, or is it a two-man show?
so we haven't, like, decided fully. I think we probably wanna do a few shows alone so we can, work on our, back and forth and kind of get the I'm actually really happy with how this episode was structured and how we did it, but eventually I think we'd like to have some guests on, right?
Yeah, we there's a bunch of other lore YouTubers out there, even
Yeah.
Star Wars
Do you
gaming
talk about
YouTubers
yeah,
who uh, may or may not be guest
yeah,
possibilities for the future, which we're certainly open to. But
yeah,
yeah,
of course.
I think us having a few episodes of just figuring out the format and how that all is going to work
Mhm.
is probably how we'll do it. And then if there's anyone that wants to be on, and
Yeah.
we'll figure that out as we go.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting where Corey and I are so kind of into this and we've read like so much and are kind of just really familiar with it. I'm interested to see somebody who like knows like Captain Shack mentioned that he might be interested, and we already talked about this on a live stream or I wouldn't bring it up. But like he is familiar with most of Legend, but he hasn't read a lot of the books, and he said that as much when we did an Empire War stream, and he said that he would be really interested in doing something like this, and I think it'd be cool to have a perspective of someone who like knows a lot of the lore, but might not have read a book for a while or read one of the older books, like someone who's never read, Jedi Academy trilogy or something.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I think some of that'll vary just on like people's schedules and if there's like a
Yeah.
good fit for the book, because we've talked about uh, whether we're just going to do it like chronologically. We kind of left it open when we were announcing the show, so we'd have some freedom to, if we wanted to jump forward to another book, or if we wanted to like cover a movie at some point or another piece of media, we'd have kind of that freedom,
Yeah.
or a comic or something. So
Yeah.
we can kind of structure that around if we ever have a guest on or whatever we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe even a new canon book at some point. Like we're not like ardent canon haters or anything, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of options. It mostly depends on your guys' feedback, what you want to see, what you expect. So
Mm-hmm.
make sure you let us know both on the live stream and after the video is finished and uploaded. Let us know not only what you enjoyed and what you're looking forward to, but if there's something in the stream that didn't work, you didn't like the way how much I cut Corey off, or the way we talk about things, make sure you let us know that as well.
But yeah, so I guess just when is the next episode? So I guess we'll just go back over that
Yeah.
now, and that'll mostly be it. So the next episode is going to be on June 13th at 7 p.m. EST once again.
Hmm.
We are going to be alternating between Eckhart's channel here and my channel.
Hmm.
So the June 13th episode is going to be streamed on my channel, Corey's Datapad. The episode after that will be back here on Eckhart's Ladder, and then back and forth like that. The video on demand version is going to be available uh, basically the day after on the opposite channel as well. So it'll stay up on
Yeah.
Eckhart's channel, but tomorrow morning it'll be up on mine as well. It may
Yeah.
be like a day delayed or something after that
Yeah. And
for
we're just
people.
gonna I'm not gonna take this down. I'm sure you want to like so once this stream is done, you should be able to go back and watch it. I don't know, YouTube might need to process it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
so it'll still be up here. So don't worry if you want to watch. If you missed something, you want to go back, it'll still be there. Want to watch it on my channel, it'll still be there. And yeah, so
Let me just mention 108 first
right,
before we end.
yes.
So for those who don't know, there's not obviously Star Wars Legends was I guess decanonized as you could call it. What was it? 20 was it
14? 2012,
2014?
2014? No, 2014, I think.
Yeah. I think it was bought Disney was bought Lucasfilm in 2012, but I think it was 2014 that it was decanonized. But yeah, I think you're right. So there's not much Star Wars Legends content being made anymore. Of course, the Old Republic is doing some consistent updates, but yesterday, a brand new Star Wars Legends comic came out, Star Wars 108. It's a continuation of the old Marvel comics from back in the day, which if you guys have watched my channel, you would know I'm a pretty big fan of. And I read it when it came out. I read it yesterday, and it's really phenomenal. I'm going to give a couple away on Twitter. But I would really recommend you guys to go to your local comic book store, ask them for a copy of Marvel Star Wars 108. Even if you're not a Marvel Comics fan, even if you're not a huge comic fan generally, just do it. Support Star Wars Legends because if they see lots of people buying new stuff, like you never know, right? Especially once once the trilogy is done, there's going to be a lot more freedom for what they can do. Either way, we all love Legends if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. So just consider buying it. And yeah, anything you're excited about in your channel or your personal life coming up, Corey, that you'd like to plug?
Uh, Nothing super relevant. I'm doing preview playthroughs for upcoming versions of Thrawn's Revenge, including our Clone Wars mod for Empire War that's coming up.
Do you want to explain
Uh,
what Thrawn's Revenge is? Some people might not.
so it's Empire War, which is a Star Wars strategy game. I run a mod called Thrawn's Revenge, which takes place in this kind of period, post Endor. We also have the Clone Wars version, and I'm mostly bringing it up because we fixed a bug recently that fixed some stability issues. So it may be something that you see coming up on Eckhart's channel
Hmm.
on Twitch stream. Someone is throwing garbage down the garbage chute, and it is very loud. But yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, and trust like I didn't play Empire Aura that much back in the day, but I've been playing Thrawn's Revenge, and if you guys enjoy the post Endor era like I do, it's my favorite by far. The New Republic era, you guys should definitely play that. There's the level of detail. I don't think there's any Bakuras in it, but I don't think there's any Ssi-ruuk ships in
Not
it now,
yet.
are there? Not yet.
We have the assets.
You do have the assets?
Well, we have a mod for Sins of a Solar Empire where the Ssi-ruuk are in that as like a random event that can happen, and we just need to get a ground model of the dinosaurs so we can actually put them in Empire at War.
Has there ever been like a Jurassic Park mobile game or something? Like,
we'll probably end up taking the Tauntaun animations from the base game and putting them on our my own model. But
oh my god, that's gonna be beautiful.
it's
make sure
fantastic.
you get the nose tongues as well.
You have to. It's going to be their attack animation, just smacking people with them.
Any exciting videos coming up or anything on your? So a lot of you probably know Corey from his gaming channel and the mod work he does, but he does have a lore channel, which is great. It does really deep dives on Legends issues that are never covered on YouTube. So any exciting videos you want to talk about, Corey?
Well, this weekend my video is going to be on Grand Admiral Marcio Batch. Right now I only do videos every Saturday. When I have I'm almost at the point where YouTube will let me monetize the videos, which means I'll be able to afford to spend a lot more time on it. So I want to get up to as close to daily videos as I can. So I'm going to be putting out a lot more with that. But
great.
That's all I got. Anything you want to?
Not really. I will be in LA from June 5th to June 10th. There will be some other Star Wars YouTubers there. I'm not sure what our plan is, but I assume there will be some sort of meetup. So if you guys are in the area and you want to come say hi, just keep an eye open on Twitter. I've put my links in the description, and Corey's link should be down there too. I don't have Corey's Twitter. Someone just posted in the chat. But regardless, yeah, I don't have any fun videos or anything coming up. Just keep an eye open on the channel as always. Just a reminder though, guys, next video or next discussion will be on the first book of the X-Wing series, Rogue Squadron. Again, I want to highly recommend, if you guys are going to check this out, do it as a book, not as an audiobook. When we feel good about promoting audiobooks, like when we get to Thrawn or whatever, we will. For now, read it on paper. Go to your local bookstore. They're so cheap. You can also read them on. I read them on Kindle.
They're also available on the Google Play bookstore, and they're a little bit cheaper there too.
Yeah, but these books are everywhere. Like your library, guarantee your library, if you have one, has these books. Yep. They were everywhere back in the day. I think that's all for me. Corey, you want to?
I'm good.
End off with anything? All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Tapcaf Transmissions. I am Justin, and this has been my friend Corey. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that. As always, be safe and may the Force be with you.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.